Okay, let's get into something today that honestly might just change how you think about communication, about listening, maybe even identity itself.
Definitely.
We're doing a deep dive into some source material that proposes this. This really radical reversal.
Uh,
It suggests that what the dominant culture often labels as noise, overwhelm, stimming, maybe processing delay.
Things that get pathologized.
Exactly. That these are often the body's essential way of maintaining coherence, of resisting sort of coercive translation.
It really is a paradigm shift. The core argument we're looking at is that the words we use, especially around autistic or gestalt ways of knowing, they're fundamentally flawed.
How so?
Well, when systems like clinical systems or even just everyday conversation look for these neat linear sentences,
Yeah.
they end up pathologizing the communication that exists before that, the whole fluid thing. They call it a deficit, a symptom. But the force we're drawing from calls it resonance untranscribed.
Resonance untranscribed.
Uh-huh.
That's quite a phrase. It sounds beautiful, but maybe a bit abstract for the listener. What's the simple takeaway there?
It just means the meaning is already there. It's present, it's vibrating in the room or moving through your nervous system.
Right.
But it hasn't been forced into the shape, the standard grammar, the expected timing that an outside listener is demanding. The body's holding the meaning, kind of waiting for the format to feel safe or, relevant.
And that's where the politics comes in, isn't it? The politics of mishearing that the source talks about. That's our mission today, to unpack that.
Absolutely.
Why is there such pressure for speed? Why does power seem to prefer communication? It can parse, instantly.
Because speed means control, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's immediate is easily categorized, managed, maybe even monetized.
Mm-hmm.
You have to wait for the whole picture for the gestalt to arrive. Well, that requires you to slow down, to relinquish control, to acknowledge there's knowledge there that maybe doesn't belong to you or isn't formatted for you.
And if you can't parse it quickly...
You label it noise. You discard it. And in doing so, you avoid the need to listen differently, to be accountable to a different rhythm.
So following that thread, we have to start right at the beginning. That moment before language crystallizes, when everything just lives as a hum.
Exactly. And it's crucial, this hum isn't chaos. It's not silence either.
It's coherence.
It is coherence. The source really emphasizes this. It's the rhythm under the skin, maybe a pressure in the air, shivering, emergent meaning, before the net of categories captures it.
So before we even talk about symptoms, we need these terms, the ones that should never have been just lumped together in one box marked pathology.
Right. We need the lexicon from the source, the lexicon of refusal, as it's called.
Okay, let's define them. Noise, signal, and static. What are we really talking about here?
And we look at this lexicon, the distinctions, they feel almost moral, not just semantic,
Okay.
So first, that's the pre-verbal coherence. It's the body's native frequency, the sort of atmosphere of meaning
Right.
before rigid structure gets imposed.
Got it. The baseline.
Then noise, but specifically noise as lineage. This is communication before capture. It's the vital, active field where new languages, new patterns get born outside of the officially sanctioned forms.
Okay, so noise isn't necessarily bad here. It's potential.
Exactly. It's generative. Third, a signal. This is described as a tuned gestalt, a unit of communication that arrives whole, contextual, irreducible. It's the entire picture, not just an isolated sentence pulled out of context.
A whole tide, not just one line.
Precisely. And finally, static. This is the mismatch, the distress. It's the interference, that feeling of overwhelm or frustration that gets created when systems mistune or misname the actual signal that was sent.
So the static isn't inherent in the communication itself?
No, it's the result of mishearing the hum or the signal. The static isn't generated by the speaker, it's generated by the systems around them failing to tune in properly.
That distinction feels absolutely crucial because it shifts the blame, or at least the source of the problem. The staff meeting anecdote in the source material really brings this home, doesn't it? Makes it painfully clear.
Oh, it does. Think about being in one of those, sterile office environments, that faint, maybe buzzing fluorescent light.
Yeah.
That's information. It's an irritant telling your nervous system the environment is loud, sensorially speaking, even if colleagues don't notice. Maybe your jaw aches, your shoulders tighten. That's your body processing sensory data. That's the hum becoming noticeable.
And then a colleague asks a question, a neat linear question, and maybe you, the listener in this scenario, need a moment. You need to wait, let the thought vibrate, wait for the full gestalt, the whole shape of the answer to land. intact.
Right. It might take a beat or 5 beats.
And that way, it gets interpreted, doesn't it, as lack, as slowness.
Yeah. The colleague reads the pause as deficit, maybe snaps. Earth to Jaime, like in the example, demanding a quick package response. They want lines. You're dealing with a tide of information.
So the static isn't your internal process.
No. It's produced by that external pressure, the demand to conform to their rhythm, their expectation of speed.
And we see this pattern play out so clearly in the therapy room examples, too. Like a child tapping their heel or humming a bit of a cartoon theme.
And the clinical report might just note it down as interfering behavior or stimming, reducing it.
But the deeper observation, the one that actually tries for attunement, it reveals something else entirely. The hum is the scaffold.
The rhythm is the key. It's stabilizing the nervous system. The child is actively managing the sensory input of the room. They're creating their own coherence.
And the source notes that the practitioner realized the whole atmosphere shifted just by like 2 degrees when they leaned into the hum, when they allowed the body its own pace.
And because that safety net was there, language arrived. Not late, not delayed.
But right on time.
Right on time, by the body's own internal clock. The thing they called noise was actually the coherence needed to hold the language together until it felt ready.
Wow. Okay, so this really forces us to confront how often and how systematically the code gets misheard.
Yes. Pathology, especially through what the source calls the colonial ear, it just flattens these hums, these scripts, into deficits. It demands we slice these whole experiences into acceptable, measurable bits.
And the prime example given is echolalia, which is so often just dismissed, right? Labeled non-functional repetition.
Yet, the observation of the source showed just how functional it was. There was this child who would whisper a specific line, but only at transitions.
At doorways.
Exactly. Entering a doorway, walking down a long hallway, starting a new task. Always the same line, from Finding Nemo. We're safe now. Nothing can hurt us.
Oh, wow. That's heartbreakingly clear. It wasn't random at all.
Not even slightly. It was regulatory. A door code, the source calls it. A vital, stabilizing password whispered to the nervous system, confirming internal safety right at those moments of change, of vulnerability.
So when an institutional ear just hears repetition, logs non-functional vocalizations.
They miss everything. They miss the core communication. This is me securing myself. And to catalog that as meaningless, that's a profound kind of wounding.
Which brings us squarely to that broader political context, the colonial ear. This way of listening that isn't about understanding.
No, it's about cataloging, measuring cadence against a foreign imposed rhythm.
There's that historical example in the source, right? Robert Kirk.
Yeah, back centuries ago, arriving in the Scottish Highlands, hearing Gaelic, hearing the natural, unstressed glide, the shimmer in the language.
And thinking it was wrong.
Mistaking it for air, for phonetic mistakes according to his linguistic framework. So he creates a dictionary aimed at capture. Coercive translation, not understanding, not preservation. Capture.
Okay, so if that's the historical blueprint, where is that happening today? What's the modern version of that dictionary?
Oh, it's everywhere we see systems designed to streamline, to standardize human behavior. It's in clinical software that measures pauses, counts repetitions, flags, flat effect.
And uses that data for decoding autism.
Precisely. That's enclosure, the institutional ownership of meaning. They take your natural way of being, codify it as deficient, and then sell the cure or the care back to you, usually through standardized, speed-focused interventions.
So in that context, refusal becomes an act of self-defense.
Absolutely. If the system tries to capture your meaning, tries to force it into their legible boxes, you maintain opacity. You refuse the quick, easy translation.
You stick with your script or your hum.
Exactly. Whether it's maintaining a rich lyrical script or simply humming to ground yourself. That becomes about preserving your cognitive autonomy, your sovereignty. It ensures your language stays yours, not flattened by a system built to erase its fluidity.
Okay, this is where it gets really powerful for me. If we accept this noise isn't just noise, but a vital resource, a form of coherence, where does it persist? Let's pivot to that positive side. Noise as lineage.
Right. And we find these rhythmic, repetitive patterns aren't just incidental. They're used deliberately as technologies of survival, especially in communities that need to communicate outside that dominant linear framework.
Like autistic scripting, for instance.
Yes. It's often misunderstood as just mimicry, but the source frames it as memory, continuity, it's anchoring, sometimes described as a kind of time travel back to a moment of safety or clarity.
So looping a phrase isn't being stuck.
It's the technology. Repeating a loved phrase, a specific pattern, until the body feels reassured enough to move forward. The repetition is the tool.
And we see a similar principle maybe in queer code in camp.
Definitely. Illegibility becomes a sanctuary. The source puts it beautifully. Every double entendre a lighthouse. Every bit of shimmer, of excess style. Every coded gesture. It's a way of whispering, I see you, we're here.
When the dominant frequency tries to erase you.
Metaphor, style, code. Those become the safe ways to speak, to find each other.
And in collective sound, too. Like protest chant.
Oh, absolutely. Whose streets? Our streets. It's not just rhetoric, is it? That call and response, the rhythm. It acts as collective nervous system regulation.
Ah, interesting.
The shared sound stabilizes the bodies in the crowd, turns the potential chaos, the noise of the crowd, into a unified pattern. Power. And you see it in work songs, too. Historically, melody coordinating bodies, turning the noise of labor into coherence.
The source also shares this really compelling personal story, moving from static to signal through finding the right kind of attunement, specifically in this case, HRT, after years of being labeled with things like alexithymia or processing delay.
Yes, and the description wasn't about gaining new information fundamentally. It was described as like recalibrating the receiver. The hormonal shift acted as an internal attunement. It allowed a coherence that had been buried under sensory static, under mismatch, to finally surface. What felt like delay revealed itself as necessary depth.
So the hum wasn't meaningless noise.
It was the overtone of a language the internal instruments hadn't been calibrated to play properly yet.
And the feeling wasn't some huge, sudden euphoria, but this profound clarity, like the body remembering its own pitch.
Exactly. Allowing that stored gestalt, that whole understanding, to finally land. Intact, unstruggling. It just shows that the body, once it finds its tuning, becomes its own metronome, its own source of truth.
That realization feels critical. And it leads us straight into the practical side, the praxis of care. If we accept noise as coherence, that language lives in relation.
Yeah.
How do we change our approach?
We have to shift our ethics fundamentally.
Okay, so if I'm a parent or an educator or just a friend sitting with someone who communicates this way, and I let go of that need to immediately translate them, what do I do? How do I listen?
You embrace listening as accompaniment. That's the key word, dwelling near the meaning without feeling you have to dismantle it, decode it, or, and this is crucial, own it.
Okay.
The goal shifts. It's not about making their speech legible to outsiders. It's about making life, the interaction, livable and safe for the speaker.
So what are some concrete ways to do that? The source mentions co-narration. What's that?
Co-narration is basically about resonance. If a child scripts, like the Finding Nemo line, instead of trying to redirect them or stop them, you meet the line where it lives.
So if they whisper, "We're safe now,"
You respond with resonance. We are. You're safe. You join the line. You validate their internal experience, allow the communication to expand, rather than treating their words purely as a symptom to be managed or extinguished.
that makes so much sense. It lowers the defenses immediately because the person feels heard, even if the words originated somewhere else. Another technique mentioned is soft starts.
Yes,
Yeah.
so much overwhelm. So much of that static comes from jarring transitions, abrupt entries into spaces or conversation.
Right.
Soft starts, quiet openings, gentle shifts in tone, maybe sharing a breath, waiting for eyes to meet naturally without demanding it. They lower the sensory noise floor right away.
You establish safety first.
Exactly. Safety allows nervous systems to synchronize. And safety, not stimulus, is what enables authentic speech, authentic presence to arrive.
This all sounds incredibly relational, very intuitive. But practitioners, educators, they're often required to provide hard data, right? Where's the rigor in this method? Doesn't it lack that measurable structure institutions demand?
The rigor is relational. We just need a new kind of metric. One that moves beyond simply counting words per minute or tallying off-task behaviors. The source suggests resonance logs.
Resonance logs. What would that actually look like?
It means keeping thick notes, detailed observations on the relational evidence. What's the tone, the timing? What gestures are present? How does the frequency of humming change? What are the sensory shifts in the environment?
So it's a rigorous record of the relationship, of the interaction itself.
Precisely. Not just a tabulation of deficits. It involves practicing consent to opacity, acknowledging that we don't have to decode every single meaning for communication to have been successful, for connection to have happened.
So the research method itself becomes an act of refusal, refusing the old metrics.
Yes. And the central question shifts entirely. Instead of asking what works, which implies a desire for control, for standardization,
You ask.
you ask the more compassionate, more accurate question. What lives? What is actually present and meaningful in this interaction, in this person's way of being?
And when you shift the question, you shift the data you collect.
Absolutely. When you redefine rigor as responsiveness, when you see survival and stability as success, the data tells a different story. The source shared that outcome from the classroom that adopted soft starts and co-narration.
Attendance stabilize.
And meltdown frequency fell by half. That's the data. Survival is success. Rigor becomes learning to hear without interrupting, learning to sit with meaning without that internal pressure to capture it instantly.
So our deep dive today really reveals that the knowledge we often need, the understanding we seek, it lives in the noise we keep. In the rhythm, the repetition, the relational coherence that institutions tend to discard because they can't measure it easily or quickly. This community archived knowledge, it's our lineage, it's our strength.
And that lineage, it reminds us, they called it noise because they couldn't stand its intimacy. Perhaps because it refused to stand still long enough to be pinned down, categorized, measured.
But we knew it differently.
But we knew it for what it was. Home. And maybe home isn't a fixed place at all. Maybe it's a frequency. It's the way one nervous system can answer another nervous system, acknowledging, validating its internal pace, its unique rhythm.
So the invitation for you, the listener,
Is maybe to practice listening differently, not just for the word, the surface meaning, but for the tone beneath it, for the hum, for the shimmer of resonance that leaves in the air between you. That perhaps is where true belonging begins.